All right, grammar fans. So we're diving into something a lot of you have been asking for. Spanish verbs.
Yeah.
You've already got the basics down, but you're ready for that next level fluency, Ryan.
Absolutely.
We're dissecting a classic Spanish grammar text to unlock those secrets of conjugation and find those aha moments that really separate the beginners from the fluent.
That's right.
So I'm excited about this one.
Yeah, it's like having the cheat codes to Spanish fluency.
I like it.
Except these codes actually make sense.
Okay.
We'll be breaking down how Spanish verbs work, especially focusing on those key differences from English that often trip learners up.
I'm all for cheat codes. So this text dives into infinitives, participles, gerunds. It's like a whole new vocabulary.
Yeah, think of it as learning the tools of the trade before you start building sentences.
Okay.
So the infinitive is the base form of the verb, like to speak in English.
Right.
In Spanish, you'll see them ending in ar, or air.
Okay.
Those endings are your first clue to how a verb will behave in a sentence.
Okay, I'm seeing a pattern here already.
Yeah.
And what about those other terms? Participles and gerunds, they sound kind of intimidating.
They do, but they're not intimidating, really.
Okay.
They're just verbs in disguise playing different roles depending on the sentence.
Right.
In English, you'll recognize them by endings like ing or ed.
Yeah.
Spanish has them too, and they're essential for forming those nuanced tenses that add flair to your speech.
Gotcha. So it's like learning the building blocks before you start constructing those like epic Spanish sentences.
Precisely.
Okay.
Now, our text starts with the simple tenses, which are your one-word verb superstars.
Okay.
Unlike English, where we often need helpers like will or have, Spanish verbs are efficient.
Right.
They pack a punch in a single word.
I like the sound of that. Less is more, right?
Absolutely.
Especially when you're trying to formulate a sentence on the fly.
But don't let that fool you.
Okay?
Within this simplicity lies a world of nuance.
Okay.
Let's start with those well-behaved regular verbs. Our text focuses on are verbs, using amar to love as the prime example.
How fitting. So how does this amar show us the ropes for all regular verbs?
Well, because it's regular, it follows a predictable pattern.
Oh.
The ending changes depending on who's doing the loving, ama, amas, ama, and so on.
So once you've got those endings down, you can conjugate a whole army of verbs without breaking a sweat.
Exactly. And the good news is the are and ear verbs, which the text also covers, follow very similar patterns.
Oh, nice.
Master those endings and you're well on your way to speaking some seriously impressive Spanish.
This is starting to feel less like a grammar lesson and more like cracking a code.
Yes.
I'm into it.
That's the spirit. But just when you think you've got it all figured out,
Uh-oh.
Spanish throws you a curveball.
Irregular verbs?
Okay, that's a mental image I won't soon forget. Dusty aisles, flickering lights. Sounds a little rebellious, these irregular verbs.
It is a little bit, yeah. The verbs you'll use most often, though.
Yeah.
The ones that add that authentic Spanish flair.
Think ser and estar,
Okay.
both meaning to be in English.
Wait, two ways to say to be.
Yeah,
Now I see why that irregular aisle is a little chaotic.
that's right. Yeah, it's one of the things that makes Spanish so expressive.
Okay.
Ser is used for permanent or inherent qualities, while estar is for temporary states or locations.
Okay.
For example, you'd say, el cielo es azul. The sky is blue, because that's a generally permanent state of being.
Makes sense. But if I wanted to say, like, the sky is cloudy today, I'd use a star.
Exactly. El cielo está nublado. It's cloudy now, but maybe not tomorrow.
Right.
It's all about capturing the nuances of the situation.
Okay, that's actually a really helpful distinction.
Yeah,
I can see how mastering those two verbs alone could really elevate my Spanish.
for sure, yeah.
But our text mentions a whole bunch more irregular verbs.
It does.
What else should we watch out for?
Well, you'll encounter haber,
Okay.
often used as a helper verb to form those sicey compound tenses we mentioned earlier. Then there's tener, which means to have in the sense of possession.
So like, I have a cat would be tengo un gato.
Sí, exactly.
Okay.
So you're already starting to think in Spanish.
I like it.
Now, haber is a bit trickier.
Okay.
You won't use it to describe physical possessions.
Right.
Instead, it often partners with another verb to express more complex tenses.
So it's like the behind-the-scenes hero adding nuance and depth to the action.
Precisely.
Okay.
Then we have ir, meaning to go.
Okay.
Its conjugation is irregular and worth memorizing.
Okay.
But trust me, you'll be using it constantly.
Okay. Ir is going straight to my verb flashcards.
Yeah.
What else is on our irregular verb highlight reel?
Let's not forget conocer, meaning to know in the sense of being acquainted with someone or something.
Okay.
You would use it to say, like, I know Maria.
Right.
Implying a personal connection.
Ah, so not just knowing a fact, but knowing a person.
Exactly.
Okay.
It adds a layer of relationship to the verb.
That's interesting.
And finally, we have conducere, which means to drive.
Okay.
Like many verbs ending in ducere, it has its own special conjugation pattern.
Okay, so we've got verbs that express states of being, verbs for having things, for going places, for knowing people, and for driving.
That's right.
I'm starting to feel a bit more equipped to navigate that irregular verb aisle.
You're well on your way. But remember, Spanish verbs have even more tricks up their sleeves. Our text also hints at these fascinating things called compound tenses and a little something called prodrop.
Ooh, intrigue. Tell me more. All right, so we've tackled those rule-breaking irregular verbs, but now we're getting hints of even more complexity with these compound tenses and something called prodrop. I'm equal parts excited and terrified.
Well, think of it this way. If simple tenses are the foundation of your Spanish, compound tenses are how you build those elaborate castles. They add nuance and allow you to express those finer points of time that we often take for granted in English.
Okay, you've officially piqued my curiosity. What kind of nuance are we talking about here?
Well, imagine you want to describe an action that started in the past but is still ongoing.
Okay.
Or maybe you want to emphasize that an action was completed before another action in the past. Compound tenses let you do that.
So instead of just saying, I walked, you could say, I have been walking, or I had already walked.
Yeah.
Subtle differences, but they completely change the meaning.
Exactly. You're getting it. And Spanish verbs have a specific way of forming these compound tenses using auxiliary verbs like haber, which we encountered earlier. It's like haber teams up with another verb to create this like dynamic duo of meaning.
And that's what makes it a compound tense. It's like a verb power couple.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
Now let's shift gears to that other intriguing tidbit from the text prodrop. You know how in English we always need to state the subject like I, you, he, she before the verb?
It's like we can't even think a complete thought without stating who's doing the thinking.
Exactly. But Spanish is much more flexible. Prodrop means that you can often drop those subject pronouns because the verb ending already tells you who's doing the action.
Yeah.
So instead of saying, yo hablo español, I speak Spanish, you can simply say, hablo español.
Wait, so I can just ditch the pronoun altogether? Is that even allowed?
Often, yes. It's all about context and efficiency. The verb ending does the heavy lifting, and it makes the sentence feel more natural and fluid.
Wow, that's fascinating. It's like those Spanish verbs are multitasking, carrying all that information within themselves.
Right. And the text emphasizes that this flexibility extends beyond single-word pronouns. You could have a whole phrase like the students or we acting as the subject, which is then often dropped in the following clauses. It gives you a lot of expressive freedom.
So not only are Spanish verbs expressive, they're efficient too. I have to say, this deep dive has really opened my eyes to the incredible nuance and flexibility of Spanish verbs. It's like a whole new world of communication is opening up.
And we've only just scratched the surface. Imagine being able to express yourself with that same level of nuance and confidence to effortlessly navigate those compound tenses and prodrop moments. That's the beauty of language learning. It's a journey of constant discovery.
It really is.
Yeah.
So to our listeners, we leave you with this. What will you express when you unlock the magic of Spanish verbs? What stories will you tell? What connections will you make? The possibilities, much like those expressive verbs, are endless.